Hello everyone and welcome once again to ThursDev. I'm your host Luke, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about tropes. A trope is a common or often overused theme or device, a cliché, or a narrative standard that basically everyone understands and can predict. Tropes are a shared experience and to that end hold a special place in the hearts of most of those who have a cultural frame of reference to said trope. The damsel in distress, the ragtag bunch of misfits, the evil twin, the cell phone or perhaps communicator not working when you're in danger. All of these are common narrative tropes that, if you watch enough television or film, you've probably already had the opportunity to experience at least once or twice. Though tropes aren't inherently considered a bad thing in general, modern literature especially tends to shy away from the employment of tropes wherever possible, in at least serious media, because predictability is considered bland. Familiarity breeds contempt, and what have you. It's a surefire way to get some critic panning your content for being derivative or unoriginal. When tropes are presented in modern media, it's frequently relegated now to either an inside joke between the storyteller and the viewer, or is presented specifically with the intent to subvert the trope somehow. In no way, really, does any media I can really think of not in some way employ at least a few. As it's been said, there's really nothing new under the sun. But the largest and most recognizable tropes are often shied away from in television and film. But video games, my personal drug of choice, have a tendency to embrace tropes. Save the princess, fight the evil corporation. Narrative tropes notwithstanding, as those have been evolving lately, but the fetch quest, crouching behind waist-high walls and looting the corpses of your enemies. These are some tropes that are just plain expected. Every genre seems to have a few mechanical tropes that, instead of shying away from, always seem to find their way into games, and in some cases are ridiculed if they don't. But why? If tropes are considered recipe for sameness, why would you include instantly recognizable tropes into your game? As an interactive medium, especially in the modern market where instant gratification is expected, too much originality or a subversion of a gameplay trope can lead to disaster, as players, having built up a vocabulary of game mechanics, will find themselves disoriented when something in the game doesn't behave as expected. Modifications can work. Destruction of those waist-high walls? Sure. People reacting negatively to you looting a corpse? Great. All in the course of driving the game's narrative, but a fetch quest that doesn't reward you with what you went on it for, or forcing a stealth section in a fast-paced shooter. Both perfectly reasonable, but your players probably won't applaud you for doing it. As a gaming community, the games that establish and define our genres set a sort of precedent that other games are expected to follow, and a divergence frequently leads to upset. Players want to understand, right from the get-go, the language of the game that you're giving to them. Fans of a genre are conditioned after, in some cases only a single game, to understand and expect that a certain thing will behave a certain way. As a game designer, whether you like the tropes or not, you're in some ways beholden to them, on the hook to deliver an experience that won't throw off your players, because many will be more willing to call your game badly made than admit that they're unable to deal with change. If you're going to put a waist-high wall down for your players to hide behind, maybe don't let opponents shave off the top of your player's skull with a well-aimed shot. They're in cover. Flank them or destroy the cover, unless you've already established very solidly that there are weapons that puncture through most cover. People really don't have a right to bitch when they're mowed down through a particle board wall in Arma, though it's understandable that they might bitch when they can plow through a light pole but get stopped dead in their tracks by a hedge when driving in Grand Theft Auto V. But how do we learn to draw that fine line? As with many aspects of game design, we learn by doing. Ignorance is really no excuse when you're building a specific kind of game with an established genre and its own established rules. It's on you to research and become fluent in the vocabulary of those games, so that you can make use of the tropes that are inextricably attached to them, as well as gauge which tropes can be safely subverted. Yes, I understand the drive to want to be entirely original or to shake things up in the system, and with enough iterations that is within your grasp, but you should at least learn the rules before you break them, so that you'll be able to make an informed decision about how and when and why to ignore them. Now, before I close up shop for the day, I did want to share something that I was hoping to shoehorn into today's episode somehow, but never found a perfect way to do so. On the topic of tropes, there's a couple of tests of game design to gauge originality that I've been a fan of for a long time because of their absurdity and simultaneous truth, called Time to Create and the Rat Test. Time to Create talks about the modern themed game of all genres. Not specifically tied to Half-Life, though I feel like it has a major contribution made to its successful induction into the Game Trope Hall of Fame. It asks the player to time, from the beginning of the game, how long it takes to spot a crate. Bonus points if you have to destroy it or move it in order to progress or receive something. Seriously, crates are everywhere. Some games barely even make it past the title screen before they fail the Time to Crate test. Similar to Time to Crate, we have the Rat Test. If you're a fan of Western RPGs, this one should ring pretty true. How long can an RPG hold out without throwing a rat, horde of rats, or giant rat at the players? Obviously, they make a great early game enemy since rats have the reputation of being plague bearers and aggressive when hungry, but they've become something of a fantasy mainstay to the point of becoming quite a cliché. Ratmen also count in this test. But that's all I have for today. Thank you for joining me in this episode of ThursDev. It's a pleasure to make these for you, and I hope that you enjoy them as much as I enjoy creating them for you. If you did enjoy today's video, consider subscribing and becoming a member of this little collective of video game enthusiasts that love both the playing and making of video games. Regardless of whether you're a subscriber or not though, I'm glad that you decided to spend some of your time on me today, and I hope that you feel like coming back again soon. We've got a ton more content like this waiting to be discovered. Until next time though, thank you once again for dropping by, and I hope that I'll see you again next time. Take care.